you can't cover everything in every single video. So I think the biggest challenge for me was figuring out what type of content to write. And I still struggle with that to this day, because I think everyone has more than enough knowledge to teach other people, because you don't have to be an expert. You just need to know more than the next person.
Welcome to the Code and Character podcast. If you don't know, Ivan is how do we call you in relation to Webwash? You're the owner, the man, the face behind the name.
Yes, I don't want to do the whole thing CEO and founder. It's like, I don't have a team of people. It's just, I'm not
Ivan,
that.
the CEO and founder of Webwash,
that's so
international
cringy.
man of mystery.
I'm the one-man band behind Webwash, which is webwash.net. I couldn't get the .com, but I got the .net.
Webwash.net. I had the bright idea to interview Ivan. Personally, I'm quite interested to see what I can learn from you. And I'm sure a lot of people are. And as for other people who are in the tech community in the broader world who are interested in what it takes to set up your own brand and produce content, this is going to be a great session. Got the initial questions here of like the early inspiration and the challenges and what inspired you to start Webwash. How did you envision its role in the Drupal community? And you can tell us about what Webwash is.
Absolutely. So I think it was 2011. I think I registered the domain name. I could check, but I think it was Christmas 2011. Long time ago. And during 2012, beginning of 2012, I started writing content on Webwash. Now, before that, I was writing content on my own personal site. This was mostly Drupal content, because I remember a long time ago writing a blog post on how to set up tiny MCE in Drupal.
Pre-CK editor, is that what?
Oh yeah, this was like 2000 yeah, I think I was still living at home, so it was a while ago. And I randomly noticed a whole bunch of traffic on my site, and then I found out that somebody posted it in the Tiny MCE forum, when forums used to be popular. And that kind of then got me all excited about writing content and seeing the traffic come in and those type of things. And I even did a screencast using a Windows version of Camtasia. And I remember it was still using Flash. And I think I do have the Flash files on my current site somewhere. And it's like, 640 by 480 resolution. It's tiny, but people seem to like it. And then I caught the bug of doing screencasts, but I always thought my screencasts were terrible, as usual. And
we all do.
Yeah.
I mean, we all think ours are terrible, not we all think yours are terrible.
I know. And then, and so then wrote a bunch of content about Drupal, but I always enjoyed writing writing about anything really, especially when it came to the tech stuff. Especially how-tos. I'm not much of a writer when it comes to like fictional things. I don't do that stuff. And then come 2011, end of 2011, I decided to register the name because that was the only name available. And then I wrote a few blog posts in 2012, and then mid-2012 moved overseas to Europe and had the opportunity to focus on writing content full-time for about a year. And so then there was a period where I was writing, a blog post a day. And I could only maintain that for about a few months. And then I kind of tried other monetization strategies during that time.
It wasn't the same opportunities back then either.
Well, yeah, it was same. It was total different opportunities. So that's how it kind of got started, and I've been trickling along ever since.
Just before we move on to some other questions, because there's questions sparking in my head as you talk, because I've found writing technical blog posts challenging myself. I almost put myself as the opposite to you. I can write quite a nice narrative. I think I can write good emails and stuff to people. But when it comes to writing technical blogs, I can get bogged down in the detail and trying to explain too much. And particularly my experience often with working things, it's such a big problem solving is you can spend hours trying to work around a problem. By the time you figure it out, you're not sure exactly which bits you got into place. And I'll find it with blog posts I read. Both the ones I write, I want to avoid doing. What I see a lot is, if everything goes perfectly, this is the instructions. And I get caught in that, and I wonder how you approach. What's your approach to writing? How do you approach that sort of challenge of knowing what to cover and what to not?
That is a challenge. I always have an idea of the level of expertise that a reader would have, or a person that watches my video, because you have to. You can't cover everything in every single video. It hasn't stopped people from commenting and saying, why didn't you explain how to install Drupal? You know, it's like, well, I'm not going to install how to install Drupal locally every single time I write about Drupal. I assume people can install Drupal, and then I figure out, okay, is this topic very complex? Like, you know, something like Search API is a bit more advanced than adding blocks to a region. So you have to kind of level that out. But also during my editing phase, when I edit things, or with videos, when I practice them, you can often stumble sometimes and kind of confuse yourself. And then as you're proofreading your content, you might be like, oh, well, I got stuck here. I'm sure somebody else will get stuck. And also, it's also a good, you know, and this comes from experience, but I know that when I do write tutorials, I just think about where people get stuck. So things like, and this is very common in Drupal, you install a module and a button doesn't appear. Why is that? Because you didn't clear the cache. And I know that field group has that problem. And you can imagine that somebody's following your tutorial, they install field group, and then they go to where you tell them to go, and there's no button, and they're like, this is crap. I couldn't find a button. So that's why I always chuck in a little thing saying, if you can't see this button, make sure you clear the cache. Or things like, if there's some type of funny dependencies, like for example, media library module, where you can install media, but to get that fancy library functionality, you need to install media library. So I always mention that. Note, if you can't see this media library functionality, make sure you have media library installed.
The same as views and views UI and fields UI.
Yes, exactly. So you need to kind of explain it, but you can't, at the end of the day, you can't cover absolutely everything. And it really comes down to me throwing stuff out where I'm like, you know what, I've worked on this tutorial enough. I'm not going to cover absolutely everything. This is not important. It's going out, and that's it. Move on, because it's already 2,500 words.
Awesome. Go on, watch our what do we call it? The Cult of Done video from a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because before we move on, what I essentially do is I have a Google Doc where I have everything, where I write everything, and I just start off with point form of just what I want to cover, and then I have a must-have and then a nice-to-have, and I'll break it down, and then I kind of move things around. It's like, oh, do I really want to cover this? Like, oh, it's going to be an extra 300-400 words. Forget it, chuck it out. Fantastic. Or I'll be like, cover it in another blog post.
I found that's exactly. I think that kind of level of perfectionism and detail is probably what's always held me back. You know, and I find myself in some workplaces where I've finally put the effort in to actually get a decent blog post put out and put it in for, you know, they go, we've got to put it through the approval process. Of course, so few people are doing it. It sits in the approval process for 6 months. By the time they publish it, it's obsolete. And you're like,
Yes.
So like, yeah, I prefer to write my own and publish them on my own website for that, because I self-approve. You did remind me of, because I just created my Drupal Content Managers course that launched a week ago.
Yes.
Now, you reminded, when you're talking about the buttons not coming up, you reminded me that I stumbled on a bug in Drupal. Here I'm trying to write a tutorial effectively for an absolute brand new beginner, trying to explain how user modes and roles work. And then so you go and log in as, because you're using the Umami demo site. So for those of you who don't know, it's just a version of Drupal you can get that's got an existing site built into it. That's a fake recipes website. So you log in as a user with the role of, what do they got? We've got an editor and an approver. I can't remember the name of it. It's an editor, and the other roles, the the manager, whatever.
Yeah.
So you log in as the creator, the content creator, and you can see their name against all the content on the content page. And then you go, okay, log out now, log in as a content moderator. And you still see the same user's content as like, you still looks like you logged in as that previous user. Even if you click on those things to go and edit them, it says you don't have permission to edit this. You've got to go and clear the cache, which means you've got to log out and log in as admin. So you got permission to clear the cache. And that was a real struggle for me when I'm trying to write a tutorial on, hey, this is how user permissions work. Log in as this user, then log in as this user. But before you log in as that user, we got to log in as admin and go to the cache, right? And I've got to explain what the cache is because I haven't explained that yet in my course. And that's that reminded me of that sort of challenge. And in that case, I couldn't see a way around that. Like, in order to demonstrate what I'm showing you, you have to clear the cache. And I haven't taught you yet. I'm going to have to teach you the cache. If you come across issues like that when you're writing a blog where it's just like, God, there's this doozy of a problem. I mean, in my case, I was writing a course for beginners, which is like they don't know anything.
Oh, absolutely. One of the first things I do, so before I even start writing or even thinking about covering a module or something, I actually do it. And I try and install the module and have a play with it. And one of the annoying things, well, it's not really annoying, but it is good to see progress in modules is when you see like a beta version of a newer module, but the older version, stable version, is a bit old. And so straight away I'm thinking, okay, which one do I install? Then I install one of them and there's bugs and you need to patch it. And then I need to think, okay, do I have to explain that? Do I have to, how far do I go? I think I recently, for one of the, what was it? For one of, for my last live stream, I covered SEO modules for Drupal, and there was some real-time SEO module. I noticed that there was a beta version or an alpha version, an up-to-date version, and I just could not get that to work. Then I looked in the issue queue and somebody recommended install this patch. It gets, it fixes the issue. And then I was like, forget it. I'm just going to use the older version. That's it.
Yeah, right. For tutorials, yeah.
Because trying to explain all of that is an issue. And I do remember there were similar problems I faced when I was recording courses, because the thing is with courses, you want it to flow nicely, as you're fully aware. You need for it to flow. So you can't then, throw a brand new site builder into views straight away, because if they see the UI, they'll freak out.
I freak out
just to make one little change.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a bit of art in that.
Contextual.
Exactly. Okay. I know. You're like, this is how you install Drupal. Now let's set up relationships and context in views. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have to kind of ease them in, or they will see the UI and be like, what is all of this?
I agree. I have seen technical books that are a bit like that. It's like, we're going to start you easy, introduction to programming.
Yeah.
Programming is how you do it in instructions. Here's a bunch of Lambda functions. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen that happen before. So I've covered a bit of your early life. With some things here about what sort of challenges you faced in the initial stages of coming up. You sort of told your story a bit. Is there any serious challenges you faced when you first started setting it up, or at all?
Not real challenges. The only challenge for me is being consistent, and you'll hear that a lot whenever you talk to content creators, just being consistent and being just consistent and writing content. Yeah. And that's the thing I've kind of struggled with, because I get bored with my own content pretty quick.
I was about to ask, do you get bored? Right.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot, because if I look back and I think to myself, if I just stuck to, say, writing blog posts or doing videos and just stuck to it, where I wanted to do everything. And that's the thing I struggled with at first. And this was back in, 2012. I was thinking, oh, should I do videos? Oh no, maybe I should do blog posts. Oh,
So,
maybe I'll do both. And then I did a bit of blog posts and I did a bit of videos, and I ignored social media because I was like, no, I just want to write content, even though YouTube is technically somebody else's
yeah,
platform. But I saw YouTube as more of an investment because people go there to search for content. It's
forward
not,
thinking.
yeah, it is. Whereas other platforms, it just comes in your feed and then it's gone and that's it. So I think the biggest challenge for me was figuring out what type of content to write, and I still struggle with that to this day. Right now, should I write those PDF carousels in LinkedIn? Should I do vertical videos or landscape videos? Which ones convert well? Because on YouTube, anything that's vertical and less than 60 seconds is a short by default, and it becomes a short whenever you upload it.
Yep.
And so now when I think about it, before it was easier. It was actually,
it's automatically a short.
yeah.
And then each platforms, that length is different, so you got to get your head around all that.
Exactly. Like today, I worked on a short form piece of content where on YouTube, Instagram, and X, it was 16:9, so it was landscape. And then on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, it was 9:16, so it was a portrait.
And you edit all this yourself? You don't
Yes.
outsource this at all, do you?
No, none of the outsourcing. I would love to, but I'm trying to save a bit of money at this point. So
yeah.
One day. Yes.
Okay. Now you just discussed, you took it into yourself. It's so close to the question we've got coming up is you were discussing how to choose pretty much what format and where to post in that what kind of content. The next question is, what sort of topics? So we've covered the formats and the approaches but when it comes to topics, how do you decide on topics for your content, and what's your process for creating and curating your educational materials? Now, I assume from my experience, what I've seen, all your content is educational.
Yes.
Stage.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to the content, I just write about what I find interesting. Right now, I do want to specialize a bit more in Drupal because that's my bread and butter. That's how I work. So I'm always thinking maybe I should get out of it eventually because the market's pretty small.
It's a small market, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I do make pretty much all of my money doing Drupal stuff. So at least it can help my personal brand and when I have to look for work, it'll help me that way. But I have written content and done videos about WordPress. I've done a whole bunch of stuff with WordPress. I try to do a bit of affiliate marketing where I put in affiliate links for WordPress.
Yeah.
Didn't really happen. Again, you need to be consistent with it and you need to full on focus. I have written, I've also got videos on how to use PHP Storm, which isn't Drupal specific, but those seem that's done okay.
There's definitely some crossovers into, HTML, CSS, PHP.
Exactly.
Some of the things we've spoken about like corporate culture and things are also.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because I have a massive spreadsheet of ideas that I want to produce content about, and it's not, and half of it is all the tools that I use, because I think everyone has more than enough knowledge to teach other people, because you don't have to be an expert. You just need to know more than the next person. And I have all of these tools that I use, even for this content creation stuff, that I could just post content out there.
Yep.
But the thing I've kind of struggled with is, where do I post that?
Yeah,
I'm not going to post it on the Webwash channel because that's predominantly Drupal. So as I was mentioning, I think just before we started recording, that I do this year want to diversify a bit. and post videos and write content under my personal brand and see what type of content really resonates with people. Because one thing I've noticed is that, what is it? WordPress content, especially the short form content, doesn't work that well with my followers on LinkedIn, but that's because they're mostly Drupal people, which is fair enough. I understand that. But on YouTube, they seem to work well because
I've done a bit of a short analysis on your YouTube channel just by like looking at your videos, view counts, and that stood out straight away. I jumped out. Bootstrap, when you spoke about Bootstrap.
Yes, Bootstrap. People like Bootstrap.
WordPress, views a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But then WordPress and Bootstrap jumped out.
Yeah, and that's it.
Sure.
WordPress has done well on the channel because, again, remember, with YouTube, people use it as a search engine.
Yes.
And that's why I'm more than happy to allocate time and resources to it. And then every other platform is kind of like secondary because if I can easily just push to multiple platforms after producing one piece of content, I will do that. If it's simply just a checkbox and it's done. But right now, my biggest focus when it comes to platforms, that is LinkedIn and YouTube. But the annoying thing is that it's my personal LinkedIn and it's a Webwash YouTube. So I'm going to try and diversify a bit where I'm going to actually start posting videos on my personal YouTube account, but they will be non-Drupal ones. So all Drupal ones are going to go in Webwash. And at the end of the day, I'm just sick of trying to, procrastinate and be like, oh, which one should I post it on? Because so many times I've thought, well, I can do a whole bunch of videos and post them on this account, but then I procrastinate and then nothing happens.
I know with my very small forays into YouTube myself, that's a huge question.
Yeah, it is.
Same thing. I've made some entertaining videos that are just purely not at all to do with tech at all. They're just fun storytelling, made up fictional stuff. Very entertaining. All my friends loved them. That were sharing around everywhere. And I've got videos on how to set up PayPal and Drupal. And it's like, oh, do I want to manage two channels? That's a really
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
They definitely don't go together, but they're managing two channels. You got that emotional, but then my view count, my subscribers, they're all on that other channel.
Exactly.
The emotional challenge to that for sure.
I would say that I have noticed because beginning of the year, I recorded a video on installing VMware Fusion 13 on a Mac because I wanted to run Windows 11 on a Mac because VMware Fusion 13.
What's Fusion? I'm out of that game in the
Windows. Oh, it's just virtualization.
I know what VMware is. It's Fusion.
Yeah, Fusion. It's just a product. It's just a product where you can run Windows on a Mac. But the big thing is that version I think 13.5 has OpenGL support. So I used it to install Bedrock Minecraft on my machine, and I spent Christmas Day because I got Minecraft for my son, and we wanted to play together, and I installed it, and then I was like, you know what? I'll do a video about this. And again, it was like, oh, where do I upload it? Do I upload a personal account, Webwash account? And I push it and I put it on my Webwash account. Now, coming to think of it, I should have probably put it on my personal account. But anyway, I've noticed that video gets a fair bit of traffic. Even what is it? AdSense revenue as well. So I can kind of see.
That's the game, right?
But
what do you think would happen if you took it down off that channel and then re-uploaded it on another one?
Oh, well, I wouldn't get the AdSense revenue because you need to be approved to get it. So that's based off watch times and things like that. But what I could do is upload another video, which people have been asking for, and that is how to adjust the hard drive size, because it's not as simple as adjusting a hard drive size, because it creates like an image and things like that. So I thought maybe what I'll do is I'll create a video. So I was thinking of creating a video on that and then putting it on my personal channel and seeing. But it's little things like that where I experimented and I was like, oh, wait a minute. People actually want this stuff. So that's the thing. And also,
exciting. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. But there's also another podcast, or they have a YouTube channel that I want to mention, and that is Ship 30 for 30. It is two guys. They have a premium community. The gist of what they're trying to promote is that you should write a lot of short form content and then see what type of content resonates with people based off impressions and comments, and then go away and spend the time writing the big tutorials or recording the bigger videos, because
based on the feedback you got from
based on the feedback.
Exactly.
Because I can straight away see that a short form piece of content that I posted on LinkedIn about Twig debugging had like over a couple thousand impressions. So, okay, people want Twig debugging. Instead of me then spending 10 hours writing a blog post or editing a 20-minute video about it. So their whole thing is coming up with the content, coming up with shorts they call like atomic essays, like shorter pieces of content. But the thing is though, you need to be pushing out every single day and just writing content every single day. And it can be just short form, like 200 words. That's it. But you need to think of your niche. You need to think about all this stuff and just pushing it out. And they actually have a whole bunch of like 40-minute long free videos about it that talk about it. And I do recommend to check them out. And, if that's the stuff you want to do.
430?
No, Ship 30 for 30. Yeah, if you just search for.
Put that in the show notes.
Put in the show notes. Yeah, start writing online in 30 days. And they talk about how to write an atomic essay. Essentially, the concept is write smaller pieces of content, write often to get that feedback loop happening, and then you can figure out what works. Because trust me, somebody who's been on social media for like better part of the last 15 years, okay? But I've always had this thing, it's like, social media, I can't do it. It's not for me. And then I realized that just posting links is the wrong thing to do. You need to actually write content. As soon as I started writing content, boom, traffic goes up.
Yeah.
Engagement goes up.
Because I've only just really got into this content creation game myself recently. Now, I threw up a website back in August at bevansbench.com and just threw a bunch of content on it. And it's funny, it ties into this, but it wasn't entirely my plan. I just had a bit of time and I put a bunch of content up there while I was working through setting up a server of my own at home and just putting little tutorials on things I did. Just happened to come in the past week and have a look at my search data in the Google console and saw that one of those articles has been getting quite a bit of hits. Well, it was an article on how to set up how to install Conda, which is the Python environment switcher for Python. How to set up Conda so you can run Open Interpreter in it. And I saw so many hits coming through just for the Manjaro Conda keywords. And it was just one that said, as you're talking to that, I'm going, that's kind of what I noticed myself by putting that piece of content up there. And most of it's sitting there doing nothing. And there's this one page that's getting hits. And you're like, right, people want to know how to set up Conda. They're not, I would have expected that to be a flooded keyword, but then my little article coming up enough to be getting a decent amount of hits. You prove it, and I'm kind of go, well, there's the place to focus, right, for wanting to get traffic to that site. Interesting. So moving on from, we've just covered like the early inspiration and challenges section of this, and we've merged onto the content creation process a little bit. We've discussed things like different platforms, how to choose the formats of your content, how to choose what topics to talk to. Could you walk us through some of your workflow for when you're creating content? Like, how do you go from an idea to a publication?
Yes. Okay. This is something that I was documenting today because it was such a complex setup. And I'm always on the lookout. I'm always changing different things. So there's two things that I've changed in the last few months. For the last 10 years, okay, I would always just start off by writing a blog post. It'll end up being 1,000 words, 1,500 words. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do a video on this. And then I'll do a video on it. And so when you think about it, writing a blog post, 3 hours to write. For me, about 2.5, 3 hours, especially if I know the topic, to write the draft. It's
quite a long time, isn't it?
Yes, but this is like creating screenshots, following along, and going through it. Then it is proofreading it and fixing it up. That's another hour. Every single time I read a $2,500 word
Yeah.
blog post, it's about half an hour, 40 minutes, because I've tracked all of this in I use Toggle to track the time. I kind of stopped doing it because it was offering no value. And then I'll go ahead and record a video. So then I'll record a video for about an hour. Okay, and then out of that hour, I would get probably half an hour of good content after spending probably 3 hours editing, 4 hours editing sometimes. So that's what I was doing. And so you can imagine writing one piece of content can be upwards of 10 hours, 15 hours.
It's easy to miss to go and read someone's blog post and go, yeah, great blog post. And it's very rarely have I, as a reader, taken a step back and gone, oh my God, this must have taken ages.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, about a year or two ago, I was paying writers to actually write content. So if you may notice, more if people are on Webwash, that in the author bio, I do have a editorial team bio. And on the blog post
on your website yesterday that you're advertising for writers, I was like,
well, I've left it on there. But I don't have any writers now because I kind of realized that I wanted to adjust course the way I was doing it, because it's very easy to sink a lot of money in paying writers, because then what happened was I would then spend a lot of time fixing up their content to the point where it would have been easier for me just to write the content myself.
Yeah. I mean, and how much return on your money do you get?
Exactly.
The money you're paying out?
Now, annoyingly, I went through probably 10 writers, and out of the 10, I had about 3 that I worked with. So, and it comes down to just managing people. And that is a skill in itself. You need to explain exactly what you want. And also you need to be able to let go. Anyway, so I did all of that. And then I realized, all right, I need to kind of adjust course, because writing content, I don't have 15 hours a day. 15 hours a week to produce this type of content. And I wanted to produce content every week. So then lately I've been doing more short form content. So what that is shorter videos, so up to 1 minute, 2 minutes long, and then posting them on the socials, which has meant that I haven't posted as much to my person or to webwash.net. When it comes from as an open source person, I don't like that, because I don't like to be locked into an ecosystem. I like to control, have my content in my own system. But I am in the process now of just uploading all my short form content onto Webwash, because when you think about it, it's content. You can go there as well.
Yeah, but your audience, like, that's how do you take if you've got a bunch of audience watching your short videos on LinkedIn, for example, or YouTube, and then LinkedIn goes, or cancels your account or something.
Well, exactly.
Your audience is wrong.
Exactly. But mind you, traffic, before I started doing this more short form content, traffic on my site was slowly dying. And that was because, Google put in changes. Like the last index change hit a lot of people. Pretty much everyone said that traffic was down across the board. I think Webwash's traffic peaked in 2016. I don't know if that's just a Drupal thing, because let's be honest, without sounding too disrespectful to Drupal, that's when Drupal kind of like peaked in growth. If you take a look at the growth of installations, that's where Drupal kind of peaked.
Yep. Well, it really found a niche since 2016 of being very focused towards government and education.
Exactly.
A lot in those two markets, but across the board, it's lost market share.
Exactly. So I've noticed that as well. So anyway, right now, what I'm doing is I start off with a list of just short form content. And what that is, again, it's a short 1 minute video plus 200 words explaining that video. And so what I do is I come up with a list of topics.
Wrong.
Well, or something like that. Yeah. Simple bite-sized things that I think will actually go viral. I don't want to say it. It's cringy to me to say, but
generate 100 views in 2 hours.
yeah, something like that. And then what I do is I simply record these shorter videos, and I probably do 3 or 4 videos at a time. And the important thing is that because these aren't 20-minute, 30-minute long videos, they're much easier and quicker to record for me. I can do 1 or 2 takes and then I'm done. Next, 1 or 2 takes, done. 1 or 2 takes. Then, so my process is then I use Camtasia. I've used ScreenFlow in the past on a Mac. For people who know content creation, they will know these pieces of software, but I like Camtasia. I've moved to Camtasia because it has one thing where it's very easy to zoom in quickly, and it just saves me so much time. So essentially,
on a screen share.
Yeah, zoom in on a screen share without pressing too many things. And you want that to be very quick, because if you're doing a lot of videos, you want it to be as streamlined as possible.
Like how much of that you do in post editing.
Well, it's all done in post. So what I do is I record at 4K, and then the canvas is at 1080p, so I can zoom in nice, and it stays nice and sharp. Yeah, exactly. So I edit a 16:9, which is landscape version, and then I just duplicate the project, because Camtasia doesn't allow multiple timelines, which is very annoying. So then I duplicate it and then do a 9:16 for my vertical ones. So then I've got two copies of it, and so I've done.
What's the pricing model of being an open source guy? I'm curious.
I think it's like
name before, but never really used it.
I think there is a subscription. You can get a subscription, or you can for like $20 a month. But then I paid for the license, so I don't have to pay a subscription. But I was able to get an upgrade price because I bought it ages ago. And then what happens is I do all the basic zoom ins in Camtasia, and so then I end up with 2 copies. Okay. Then I open up Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, because what I do is Premiere Pro allows you to have multiple timelines in a single project, and I can then fix up the audio. So it goes into Premiere Pro. I fix up the audio to make sure I remove background noise. And most importantly, now with Premiere Pro, as of like a year ago, it actually does speech to text, where it uses a Sensei speech to text. It's not 100%, but it does the job. And I can easily
to Google, to YouTube's
transcription. But the thing is, similar level, but you can put in captions. And that's the thing. So I essentially use Premiere Pro to just add in captions and fix up the audio.
You're not doing CapCut like all the cool kids.
I could, but I don't want to pay $16 a month for that. And it does annoy me that Camtasia can't do it all, because I need to then move it over to there. Then once I
was going to push for a sponsorship for Camtasia, and it's something negative.
That's all right. And then once that's in there, so then it's gone from Camtasia to Premiere Pro. I add in the audio, and then if I highlight things, I sometimes put in a little tick noise or something.
Oh yeah. Got to get your sound effects, mate.
Yes. Yeah, basic sound effects. I then use Canva for the thumbnails, and I chuck in the thumbnails in the first 5 frames of the video, because some platforms do not allow you to select a thumbnail. But what they do is they grab it. YouTube. Yeah. But they grab it from the first frame. So then, but most of them now do allow you, but back in the day, LinkedIn didn't. Whereas I think now LinkedIn does, but it will grab it from the first frame. So if you add it to the first frame of the first few frames, then it appears.
Do you use that? You make a new thumbnail every time, or you've got a title screen that you use?
Well, I clone a thumbnail file from Canva, and that's it. So I clone it. I just change a few things, and then just export it out, chuck it into Premiere Pro, and just add it quickly to the timeline.
So I've been quite impressed with your clean branding. I mean, it's not the most amazing graphic art stuff, but there's a consistent look and feel that's nice and neat and minimal.
It
looks nice. Right?
That's what I try and do. Like, you know, people talk about spending hours on the thumbnail. There are graphic designers that specialize in thumbnails, and I do understand the importance of it, but I'm not a Mr. Beast, okay? I am not going to do A/B testing on thumbnails. I just don't have the time for that. At the end of the day, I just need to make sure that it is visible. And the thing is, though, you may notice that with some of my videos, what I do, especially because I create a portrait and landscape video, I do not want to create a separate thumbnail for portrait and a separate thumbnail for landscape. So what I essentially do is I chuck in the, the portrait thumbnail, because it can kind of fit in a landscape. I just chuck it in there and that's it. And it's like, I'm just trying to optimize. For me, I would rather have a thumbnail which is 60% done and just get something out. And that's it. And then move on to the next thing than to really fixate on it. So once the videos are done, then I write a 1 to 200 word blurb about it, which is my short form, which is the text version. Okay. Now, the way I've been doing generating these text versions is I will sometimes write it, but what I've also been doing, I do have a ChatGPT prompt, which is.
I knew we were heading that direction.
Yeah.
I'm a friend of Sierra Kana.
I do have a ChatGPT prompt, which starts off by saying, you know, this is a short form piece of content, and here are 5 examples of posts that I've already posted onto LinkedIn, and I just wrap them with like example 1 tag, and I just wrap them. So I've got examples. Then what I do, I grab the transcript from Premiere Pro, because I can export that out, and then I tell it, please. I always ask nicely, because remember, when the robots take over, they will see when Skynet goes online, they will be like, hello, Ivan, you've been nice to us in ChatGPT, so we're going to let you live.
You forgot to say please.
So I always say, please, can you convert this transcript, because I've got the transcript from Premiere Pro, into a step-by-step guide. And then below that, right at the bottom, I've got a constraints, and then I tell it no emojis, no cringe words, no this and that, and I'll copy that from other people. And so that generates probably a 80% done piece of content. I then, of course, go in there and clean it up, and just
cleaning it up, I assume.
But it's only 300 words. It's easy for me to clean up, and so
which idea about creating short form.
Yes, exactly. But today I posted up I wrote a short 200 words, but I wrote it first, and then I asked ChatGPT to just clean it up, because sometimes it's one or the other, because it was just easier for me, because I was like, you know what, I can quickly write it. Once that goes up, and then I just upload it and then post it, and then I just sit there and watch all the feedback or no feedback. Depends.
I've had a similar experience with. It's interesting with ChatGPT. I find I can write crap and have it fix it up, and then take what he wrote and then make it even better. It's an interesting little. You take what it spits out isn't good enough, but it's better than the waffle that I threw out, right? And then once it's got it all nice in a nice formatted structure, you can just tweak little bits and go, now it's nice.
Yeah. So that's my workflow. I would love to one day have be able to outsource it. I could easily outsource it, but it's just managing that, and also having that backlog of work where I can just give to them, because I would love, my ultimate goal would be to just do the video, have a Camtasia file, and hand it off to someone else, and they do everything else.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, everything's in the video, and it will literally take me 15 minutes to do one video, and I just
That's
hand it
the
off to
dream,
him.
mate. That's the dream. If you find someone who can do it without you having to spend
Yeah,
hours managing,
exactly.
as you said earlier, when often you've got to redo
Mm.
the work anyway, you're better off doing it yourself.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
good to set that up.
That is the dream. But I'll also add quickly. So I've also been doing, especially this year, I've been doing live streams, and one thing that I'm trying to do, but again finding the time, is cutting up the longer live streams into short form pieces of content. But instead of being like 1 minute long, these end up being like 8 minutes long. And again,
Because your live streams are what, as long as this podcast.
yeah, they can be an hour and a half. I need to spend time and figure out how to cut up a video. That takes time, you know. I need to then once I have cut up each video, it's 8 minutes long, and it does require a bit of editing. But also the problem that I have is that they're all landscape, so they're not optimized for vertical. So then it was like, I think I've only done one of the live streams, but I look at all my live streams, and I've done about 8 of them. It's like I can get 10 to 15 pieces of content from every single live stream. I've got to have over 100 pieces of short form content, but I don't have the team behind me to kind of cut that up and edit that up and push it out. I you know, it's one of the things that I kind of do on the train when I go down to Sydney, because I've got 2 hours on the train down to Sydney. It's like, maybe I'll just, you know, I pull out my laptop, start editing videos, but then I realize that Camtasia doesn't work with like the trackpad on a Mac, which is absolutely terrible.
Ew.
Anyway, I know. I was like, why the hell? It doesn't even work with the trackpad. I can't even pinch and zoom. It's like, oh, mate.
You get more work done on the train than you do in the office than when you get.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, when we first started this podcast, we had a quick look at Opus Clip for chopping up long form content. Now, I was 80% impressed with it. It covered some of the things you just said.
Yeah.
Because we see this format we've got here with me on the left and you on the right.
Your left and my left are the same because we're facing the same direction.
We're two different people. We can't have the same left. It doesn't make sense.
Here we go again.
It was smart enough to grab those and shift it around into a vertical format and put captions on it and find interesting. It actually found interesting clips in there, like out of an hour's worth, it found like 40 different clips. But it's a paid for service, and it was also uses its default template. I imagine if you used it, you just look like everybody else.
Yeah.
You'd have to be very clever with your thumbnails and stuff to work that out. But where do you see that coming? Is that something you're open to using? Do you think it's ready yet?
I haven't. I personally haven't tested it out with my type of videos, but I would imagine when you have 2 talking heads, it's much easier for the AI to focus on that. With my videos, I want them to focus on the mouse cursor, because you think about it, if you've recorded a video which is landscape and you're trying to fit it into portrait, you need to kind of pan the whole screen around, move it up and down, zoom in to a certain part, then move to my right, and then move left, zoom in, and maybe there is a specialized service that does it, but I would imagine it's much harder.
Audience members can make one, and then
maybe they can
let us use it for free.
I would assume it's much easier to focus on having AI to focus on a
face detection's already a thing.
Face detection, exactly. Face detection has been around for like the last 20 years. Like, it's not a hard thing to do. I mean, you can install focal point on a Drupal site and have it focus on, well, it technically focus on the pixel density, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, it's much harder when you're dealing with content. So I have seen other people do things where they have their image above. So in a portrait, they have their image or the screen above each other and just have it that way.
That's what I want.
It does require a slight bit of editing, but
you
when the
have
videos
subtitles over the screen,
exactly. But the thing is, though, when you're dealing with 1 minute long videos, it's very quick, and Camtasia makes it very easy to zoom in the canvas. Whereas if you use, say, Premiere Pro is a professional tool. So to edit things, it's just more cumbersome where you need to cut the clip. I'm sure there's professionals out there that know how to zoom in and pan and do things very quickly, but Camtasia, in my experience, was just better at it.
You know what you got to do? You got to do a video on how to do it so that everyone can see you do it wrong.
Exactly, and then they'll tell me, do this. Yeah, exactly.
We mentioned that last week.
Yes.
Now, a big question that I'm interested in is how you manage your balance of, because you work full time.
Yes.
And do some consulting and things through Webwash as well.
Yep.
Yet, especially recently, I've noticed you consistently producing quite a lot of high quality content.
Yep.
And of course, you're spoken to doing live streams and cutting those down and things like that. But we've spoken about the time consuming process that goes into creating content. You've got a family, you've got full-time work. How do you balance that and keep yourself motivated?
Well, I kind of batch things. So when I record videos, I record 4 or 5 at a time. And that's it. And then I just try and batch work as much as possible. I repurpose content as much as I can. What I do is I change thumbnails. I adjust things slightly, and I also rewrite. And again, I use ChatGPT to rewrite some things. So I do have a massive spreadsheet where I track when I've uploaded some content. And then I'm like, all right, you know what? If it's been a couple months, especially with like social media stuff where the posts get lost, like once they're out of your feed, they're gone.
Yeah, they only hang around for like, if like a couple of days, unless they have to go viral.
Exactly.
Unless they go viral, they just disappear.
They just disappear. Absolutely. So then, and so that's how I do it. But yeah, it does take time. And
is
some days,
dedicated time a week, or is it
whenever I can find the time after, like it's always after hours, and then just squeezing in 15, 20 minutes here and there, because you'll be like, for me, it is like, okay, I have half an hour. Let me get this one video done. Or let me get these 2 videos done, quickly edited. All right, quickly edited, done, out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I've always struggled with getting things done in 15 minutes, half an hour, because my experience is when I've got time blocks like that, I spend the entire time troubleshooting why my computer won't turn on or why my editing software won't start.
Well, yeah.
And I burn out very quickly, but maybe that's part of that. Any specific time management strategies that you find dispensable? Not really.
Not really. I would love to be able to, have a morning routine where they talk about, get up and do a cold plunge and drink some tea and things like that, and spend an hour at 4:30 in the morning writing content for 2 hours. I haven't got any of that. I just do it as, I did enjoy, like when I mentioned that I was writing content full time when I was overseas living in Europe. I would always start at 9:00 and then just write content for 2 hours, and that I enjoyed because I could just focus on it. I could just switch things off and be like, all right, you know what? Focusing on that, getting to work and doing the work, and that I really enjoyed. And maybe, I will get that opportunity in the future if I can monetize this stuff, where it can be my full-time job. I think
need a
is
Patreon,
important.
Mate, come and monetize it.
Again, I've been trying to. Yeah, I'm thinking. I've got a lot of ideas there.
Patreon platform too. Speaking of getting stuck on platforms.
Well, that's the thing. It's like when you start looking at these platforms, it's like, what? They want to take 10%, and I still need to pay the Stripe fees.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. Yeah. So it's something that I do want to look at. Absolutely.
I've got a question here about, and you've spoken to it a little bit about how does your work influence the content you make. You did say you tend to make things that you just find interesting, but are there any particular things you found particularly challenging from a technical perspective that you then turned into content after solving it? Go, look, I had this really serious problem and it was really hard, or do you tend to just normal things you experience? Like that's what tends to spark your feed into your content the most?
Yes. Well, if I've implemented some module at work, and it is a long, and it was like a hard thing to set up. Then I have in the past converted that into a blog post, and that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from, based on problems that I've had.
Yep.
I used to get a lot more inspiration when I was actually building brand new Drupal sites. I've probably mentioned this in a previous episode, but it's been a long time since I've actually built an evergreen Drupal site from scratch. Most of the sites,
we've both spoken to that. That's been my
Yeah.
entire career. I think that like I can count once that I ever
Yeah.
got the opportunity to set up a project from scratch. And you're always
Yes.
just working on other people's bad decisions.
Yes. Yeah. The
Yeah.
websites are either being built already or the Gov CMS, especially
Yeah.
if you're based in Australia.
And so that means that a lot of
You-
decisions about what modules to use and stuff have already
That's
been
all
made.
been made. Maybe there is a module out
adding
there.
very custom features that no one's going to be
Mm.
interested in, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's a very
Yes,
customer
yes.
specific thing.
Yeah, very customer. The only example I can think of off the top of my head was one time somebody asked for displaying web forms in a modal pop-up or a dialog box, and then I discovered that web form has that out of the box. No pun intended. Modal box, dialog box. It has out of the box functionality to display, where you can display a form in a dialog box. That's what it calls it. And I didn't know that, because Webform has pages and pages of configuration. So then I was like, you know what, this is going to be a good blog post, because I found it interesting. I'll post about it.
I have noticed you've posted a few times on the WordPress Gutenberg editor.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, I noticed you did that because there was a lot of, I think it's when it really first actually became a thing that you could use it. Someone ported it over.
Yep.
But I've seen recently you've posted about that. So that's generally something. Is that something you've used in work, or just something you find interesting?
Well, I haven't used it. I've used it on WordPress, and that's where I've mostly used it.
What is the Gutenberg editor?
So the Gutenberg editor for WordPress is a block-based editor. So a couple of years ago, they moved from a standard text editor into more of a block-based editor, where you type in / and you're adding blocks to a page instead of just text.
So instead of WYSIWYG like Word, it's more of a
exactly.
presentation build like old Microsoft Publisher.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And I do think that there is a lot of value in having that in a Drupal site, because first of all, Gutenberg is open source. You can somebody has ported over to Drupal. Now, originally when I talked about it in like 2018 or something, I did mention that you should be wary about using the module, because you are locking in your content to that module. And we often talk about vendor lock-in when it comes to using other people's platforms, but you can easily lock in your content by implementing your Drupal site in a particular way. Like, for example,
Layout builder.
Yeah, using layout builder. If you override layout builder and write all your content in an overwritten page, you're locked in your content. If you're using paragraphs, you're locked in your content to that.
Yeah, exporting revisions would be a challenge, I imagine, too. Like, as soon as you
Exactly.
all that extra data that you did.
Yeah. But I did mention 5 years ago, or however long it was, that just be wary about using it. But the module has been around now for ages, and people are maintaining it. So now I'm like, use it. I totally recommend it.
Is anybody out there actually using it? Because I heard of it when it came out. It was a flash in the pan, sort of. That's a negative term, but it was exciting when it came from within WordPress. Someone's gone, now we've got Gutenberg editor, and that same message you just gave about how to be careful using it, and also it was hard to. Obviously, you couldn't lock the user down as much. Like, that's one of the things that Drupal's good at, is you've got a format and you've got a style, and your editors have to work within those constraints. Whereas the Gutenberg editor gives your content editors enough flexibility to make a mess.
Yes.
So that's
absolutely.
But then it has been around for a while. I'm curious if anybody's actually using it out in the workforce, because that's, again, it's coming from that same point of so many websites I've built that are already just, the decisions have all been made. I'm just, fixing existing bugs or adding very, very, very unique custom features. As for those larger decisions about this is the general approach we're taking, those decisions are made already.
Yeah.
And something like changing to Gutenberg editor is not something you do in the middle of a project.
No, absolutely.
Very rarely, if it does. So we're coming down to, we can go on for ages here, but this is an interesting thing to speak to, is around the idea of impact and contributions. So what do we got here? So the Drupal community itself, in what ways do you believe that Webwash has contributed to the growth and development of the Drupal community? I remember you saying your way of contributing is creating content.
Yes.
So,
absolutely. And I would, I don't want to be, I don't want to think that my content has changed Drupal that much. I don't know. Maybe it has.
I wouldn't be too modest about it. I think it has. I mean, I've noticed, but I know you. But then, but it doesn't take much to do a bit of type Drupal into YouTube and up it comes.
And that's
I know people have thrown your name around.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something that as I've mentioned, I like to contribute to the Drupal community by writing content, because I do think it's important that we have content out there about Drupal. People need to be writing content about it, and I try and help other people who write content or do live streams about Drupal, because you want Drupal to be in the zeitgeist, in a certain way, in the development zeitgeist.
Teach me big words.
I know, yes. Throwing that word around. You want people to see, because marketing, I remember seeing somewhere that marketing is 90% just reminding people you exist, and that's important. And I do think that when people search for things, it's important that we have good content appear.
Perhaps another way to put the question to you a little bit, because clearly you've done a lot of educational content, and from a matter of providing existing Drupal people who have an issue, or particularly the newbies who are coming across, I need to set up views, and you've got some great tutorials on the common stuff. But speaking of marketing, and what's the what do you call it? That word for preaching of it? I've lost the word, but for actually getting Drupal out and the promotion of it, right? Sorry, I'm stuck for words. What's that?
What?
Like missionary? Going out.
Evangelist or something.
Evangelism. That's the word.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
From my perspective, not a lot of your Drupal. It's all kind of been, here's how to do this in Drupal sort of thing. Is that something that's entered your consciousness, the idea of evangelizing Drupal and selling it? I was going to ask this question earlier, of sort of encouraging people to expand and consider Drupal as solutions for things. Do you think there's a place for that, or is it a rather specialist tool, and the people that want to use it are likely to use it for those use cases anyway?
Yeah. Well, I think by me writing, I am evangelizing about Drupal. Now, I don't think I've written too much about why you should use Drupal or why you shouldn't use Drupal. Mm-hmm. I don't tend to write about those opinionated pieces. Things are different. Things are different when it comes to content on the stuff that we do. Things are different, but in the past, I've always been about just getting straight to the point, because opinions are opinions, and they probably get traffic, but it doesn't really teach anyone. And maybe I should do that. I don't know. Maybe I should create 10 reasons why Drupal sucks. Well, no, that's actually an episode for us to do eventually. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. Also, I'm not pushing you to say that you should either. From a marketing perspective, of course, doing a Drupal is dumb. WordPress is wrong. What I kind
Yeah,
of
exactly. Like,
itself,
you know,
but yeah, is there actually any advantage to actually achieving a true end result of evangelizing Drupal? Is that something that there's any point to besides getting views, right?
yeah, well, at the end of the day, you want people to use Drupal because if people are using it, then we have a good ecosystem, and we have a good community. Then that helps everyone else. But I
Yeah.
do think at this point, yeah, the market share for Drupal is a bit, I don't know, it's changed. It's changed, and I do think that
It's stable. It's stable.
it's stable.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's stable, but it has to move over to, I think, more of the headless side of Drupal. More of the headless side where it's used as a content repository, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, only time will tell. We'll see. We'll see in the next couple of years.
So fascinating, because my perspective is I've been doing Drupal for a long time. I've become very specialist at it. So I know I've got blinkers on to when it comes to other people. Go, why should I use Drupal in front of something else? Because you can hire me and I can do Drupal. Like
Exactly.
exactly. Did have that recent experience of having a bit of a look into. I was just curious, and I think I mentioned this last week about like, hey, what if I set up a WordPress site and put a commerce setup on it, and go and watch a video on how to put commerce in WordPress, and straight away it goes, here's the top 4 best commerce plugins for WordPress, and 3 of the top 5 were paid, and I'm just like, I'm overloaded already, and I'm 30 seconds into my research into WordPress. Like, I'm done. And it's like, it's so popular. And that's my very first question. I was like, no, I'm out. It was really interesting. And that was just from that perspective. And that's, so my question is, I know a lot of people in Drupal are very big Drupal evangelists. And I tend to be too, but that's a natural human thing of, it's what I know. I love it because it's what I know. I'm curious, is there, that's the thing. Evangelizing Drupal, is it of benefit to the community? Does Drupal really have its place? Should it be more popular than it is? Because it's definitely a very good content management system. It does a lot. It's great in enterprise. The governments and education markets have picked it up for a reason, because it's stable and it's secure. And it's also that's what I imagine. It's a little less flexible than WordPress, in that I've heard it explained. WordPress is like Duplo. If you want to build a small little website, you can put it together very easy and it just works. But Drupal's a bit more like Lego Technic. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, that's very true.
I don't personally know. See, this is rhetoric, right? From me. When I've researched, I read the blog, that's what I get told, but having not had personal experience. So I mean, I guess there is a place for, should Drupal be evangelized more? And is that something you want to, talking about is that something you've really considered putting into your content or not? You've never really
I don't know. I've never really thought of it that way. I always thought, if I'm writing about Drupal, I guess my live streams are a bit like that, showing people they're more long form, showing what you can do. I have been thinking of doing a WordPress versus Drupal series where we talk about like the field system. Where in WordPress,
there's so many other CMSs out there.
But things like WordPress ACF, which is an advanced custom field, versus the field system in Drupal, and then you explain the differences. Because I've been building WordPress sites now for a couple of years, since 2016, really, and so I think I've got enough experience with it. I'm not an expert like I am in Drupal, but I've got enough experience. Yep. So I was thinking of doing a showdown, ACF versus Drupal fields, and then just implementing the same thing and having 2 browsers open up and saying, okay, let's implement this in Drupal. This is how we do it. Let's implement it in WordPress.
I saw yesterday I built the same application in 5 different JavaScript frameworks. Which one's the best?
Yeah,
I didn't watch it, but I saw one while I was editing our previous episode.
Yeah, something like that, and then And then, I can say, well, the good thing about fields is this, this, and this. And that's it. So that's a bit of
Good.
evangelizing.
Yeah, I think this has been I've learned a lot. I've had really
good.
If you've got any questions, if we're wrong about anything or you want to give us some advice, pop it in the comments. Let us know. Doing the plug, Ivan's smiling at me. We got to do that.
Yeah, you have to.
And I don't know. Next week we'll see you again. And thanks for coming.
All right. See ya.
Cheers.